Hello, welcome to Examining Fictional Heroes and the Authors Behind Them. My name is Wayne Browder. Today, I want to read an excerpt to you from Tarzan Triumphant. The book is definitely by Edgar Burroughs, and this is it. The Tarmangani had long been aware of the presence of the baboons, being downwind from them, where their strong scent was borne to his keen nostrils. Also, he had seen the sentinel at almost the same instant that the sentinel had seen him. Yet he continued upward, swinging along in easy strides that suggested the power and savage independence of Numa, the lion. Suddenly Tangani, the baboon, sprang to his feet, uttering a sharp bark, and instantly the tribe awoke to action, swarming up the low cliffs at the foot of which they had been feeding. Here they turned and faced the intruder, barking their defiance as they ran excitedly to and fro. When they saw that the creature was alone and bore no thunderstick, they were more angry than frightened, and they scolded noisily at the interruption to their feeding. Zugash and several of the other larger bulls even clambered partway down the cliff to frighten him away. But in this they only succeeded in increasing their own anger, for the Tarmangani continued upward toward them. Zugash, the king, was now beside himself with rage. He stormed and threatened. "Go away," he barked. "I am Zugash. I kill." And now the stranger halted at the foot of the cliff and surveyed them. "I am Tarzan of the Apes," he said. "Tarzan does not come to the stamping grounds of the Tangani to kill. He comes as a friend." Silence fell over the tribe of Zugash, the silence of stunning surprise. Never before had they heard either Tarmangani or Gomangani speak the language of the ape people. They had never heard of Tarzan of the Apes, whose country was far to the south. But nevertheless, they were impressed by his ability to understand them and speak to them. However, he was a stranger, and so Zugash ordered him away again. "Tarzan does not wish to remain with the Tangani," replied the ape man. "He desires only to pass them in peace." "Go away," growled Zugash. "I kill. I am Zugash." Tarzan swung up the cliff quite as easily as had the baboons. It was his answer to Zugash, the king. None was there who knew better the strength, the courage, the ferocity of the Tangani than he. Yet he knew, too, that he might be in this country for some time, and that, if he were to survive, he must establish himself definitely in the minds of all lesser creatures as one who walked without fear and whom it was well to let alone. Barking furiously, the baboons retreated, and Tarzan gained the summit of the cliff, where he saw that the shes and balus had scattered, many of them going farther up into the hills, while the adult males remained to contest the way. As Tarzan paused, just beyond the summit of the cliff, he found himself the center of a circle of snarling bulls, against the combined strength and ferocity of which he would be helpless. To another than himself, his position might have appeared precarious, almost to the point of hopelessness. But Tarzan knew the wild peoples of his savage world too well to expect an unprovoked attack, or a killing for the love of killing, such as only man, among all the creatures of the world, habitually commits. Neither was he unaware of the danger of his position should a bull, more nervous or suspicious than his fellows, mistake Tarzan's intentions or misinterpret some trivial act or gesture as a threat against the safety of the tribe. But he knew that only an accident might precipitate a charge, and that if he gave them no cause to attack him, they would gladly let him proceed upon his way unmolested. However, he had hoped to achieve friendly relations with the Tongani, whose knowledge of the country and its inhabitants might prove of inestimable value to him. Better, too, that the tribe of Zugash be allies than enemies. And so he essayed once more to win their confidence. "Tell me, Zugash," he said, addressing the bristling King Baboon, "if there be many Tarmangani in your country." Tarzan hunts for a bad Tarmangani who has many Gomangani with him. They are bad men. They kill. With thunder sticks they kill. They will kill the Tongani. Tarzan has come to drive them from your country. But Zugash only growled and placed the back of his head against the ground in challenge. The other males moved restlessly sideways, their shoulders high, their tails bent in crooked curves. Now some of the younger bulls rested the backs of their heads upon the ground, imitating the challenge of their king. Zugash, grimacing at Tarzan, raised and lowered his brows rapidly, exposing the white skin about his eyes. Thus did the savage old king seek to turn the heart of his antagonist to water by the frightfulness of his mane. But Tarzan only shrugged indifferently and moved on again, as though convinced that the baboons would not accept his overtures of friendship. Straight toward the challenging bulls that stood in his path he walked, without haste and apparently without concern. But his eyes were narrowed and watchful, his every sense on the alert. One bull, stiff-legged and arrogant, moved grudgingly aside, but another stood his ground. Here, the ant-man knew the real test would come that should decide the issue. The two were close now, face to face, when suddenly there burst from the lips of the man-beast a savage growl, and simultaneously he charged. With an answering growl and a cat-like leap, the baboon bounded aside, and Tarzan passed beyond the rim of the circle, victor in the game of bluff which is played by every order of living thing sufficiently advanced in the scale of intelligence to possess an imagination. Seeing that the man-thing did not follow upward after the Shes and Belus, the bulls contented themselves with barking insults after him and aiming uncomplimentary gestures at his retreating figure. But such were not the acts that menaced safety, and the ape-man ignored them. So, to me, there's always a lot to unpack in these little segments. The first off is that Tarzan knows how the tribe is going to react to him when he first appears. And his answer to Zugash of going up the cliff increased their anger. I think the important part of that is that if he were to survive, he must establish himself definitely in the minds of all lesser creatures as one who walked without fear and whom it was well to let alone. We in our lives don't necessarily face such issues, but we do face similar issues among the people we circulate around, whether it be work or wherever. There is still a hierarchy. And you must establish yourself within that hierarchy. And a lot of people like to place a lot of emphasis on what they call alpha males and, everything else. I'm also going to say about that, too, something that's been on my mind. Just because you're an alpha in this circle does not mean you will be one in that circle. Every circle that you enter is different. You have to establish your place in it. Also, he knew he was in a dangerous position. And he knew that a misinterpretation of his actions could cause an attack on him, which would kill him. But he was in this country to look for people who were trading in slaves and other things of that nature. He told the baboons that they were there to kill them because that was the only way he would gain the baboons' interest in this subject at all. Although he knew if those men were about, that they would know about it. That was his whole purpose in contacting this tribe of baboons. I'm sorry, guys. Excuse me. My voice seems to be getting better for the most part. Still dealing with a lot of allergy issues. Forgive me. I'm probably going to let that ride unless it gets worse, because it's really difficult to make a lot of takes of one video, especially when I'm dealing with such a long segment. So please look over that. So the baboons continued to challenge him because they did not trust him. So seeing this, he shrugged indifferently and moved on again, as though convinced that the baboons would not accept his overtures of friendship. This also was a game. He was going to learn what he needed to know, regardless of whether the baboons helped him or not. Straight toward the challenging bulls that stood in his path he walked, without haste and apparently without concern. This is very similar to what he had done earlier establishing himself in the minds of these creatures. This was a continuation of that. And this, to us, a good lesson for us in our lives is really to guard our emotions when we're in mixed company. Of course, we are not, including myself, always capable of doing that. It's just a good habit to have. And he recognized the real test. To me, of all the little things in this passage, this is the hardest. Seeing that the man-thing did not follow upward after the shes and balus, the bulls contented themselves with barking insults after him and aiming uncomplimentary gestures at his retreating figure. But such were not the acts that menaced safety, and the ape man ignored them. We all know why that's difficult, and we also know why it's important. We get this kind of crap all the time in our society. People aiming uncomplimentary gestures at us when we're driving or at a distance behind a keyboard. These days, people are emboldened to do all kinds of garbage because they have been conditioned to believe that they can get away with it. Mike Tyson, I believe, once said, social media has taught people that they can be disrespectful without getting punched in the mouth. And I think that's pretty accurate. And also, as that Tyson quote always does, reminds me of a quote from Robert E. Howard. Civilized men are more discourteous than savages because they know they can be impolite without having their skulls split. Guys, we live in a society that has no manners whatsoever. It's tough to ignore this stuff sometimes. A lot of times it's tough, and I've failed myself. I've failed so badly in these things, I've initiated this crap sometimes. Total disclosure. I'm sure most of us have, even though we know better and even though we may regret it later. We should always, I know most of us are, who tune into this show and tune into shows like this. We need to constantly be on our guard, but sometimes that beast comes out with no indication at all. It's like the straw that breaks the camel's back. Suddenly we just trip out over something minor a lot of times. But always we need to try and we need to learn to ignore these things in other people because they are not really a menace. As a matter of fact, most of the time when people do that, it's because they're weaker or they're afraid to face you face to face. At any rate, guys, I hope everyone has enjoyed this. I hope it's been of some use to you guys. And thank you for everything you guys do, for tuning in, for listening, following. I appreciate all of it. Have a good evening and have a good week. Thank you.